I'm Mike Tidwell, Director of Chesapeake Climate Action Network Action Fund, or CCAN Action Fund for short. I've lived in Montgomery County since the late 1980s, raised a family here, and still live in Montgomery County. Welcome to this press Zoom call on the enormous potential climate impacts of the proposed 300 megawatt data center in Dickerson, Maryland. We have three speakers for you today. Myself, representing CCAN Action Fund, Angie McCarthy, representing the nonprofit group Nature Forward and the Coalition Marylanders for Data Center Reform, and Doug Siglin, who is the Director Emeritus of Building a Better Maryland and a policy advisor to CCAN Action Fund. I will speak to the general climate implications of the Dickerson data center as currently proposed by the company Atmosphere Data Centers. Angie will speak to the particular health and climate concerns surrounding the potential use of diesel generators as backup power at the Dickerson data center site. And finally, Doug will discuss the various policy options open to the Montgomery County Council to require that the Dickerson data center follow the lead of companies like Google Inc. and power their data center in Montgomery County with 100% clean energy. So I'll just start with a little bit of background. I'm sure everyone on this call is aware that there is a major push across this country and in particular in this region, with Virginia being the epicenter of a data center boom in development for AI and other purposes. This year alone in the Virginia General Assembly, there were 60 separate data center reform bills introduced. And we believe that some pretty good bills are going to get out of that session by March 14th when that session ends. So there's a lot of attention to this issue. There's a lot of legislative attention to this issue, and for good reason. We know about the general impacts related to water use, noise, impacts on surrounding communities, and for the purposes of this call, especially the enormous amount of electricity required to run these data centers, and much of it coming from fossil fuel generation, making it an enormous climate issue. In Maryland alone, there is a contested data center proposal in Charles County, in Prince George's County, where they've implemented a moratorium, in Frederick County, where citizens are working to get 15,000 signatures to petition this question of whether to develop a mega data center campus in Frederick County onto the ballot in November for the general election. So a lot going on in the region around data centers. And so with all this controversy, especially with the environmental implications, I was really pleased to learn that finally the company Atmosphere had arrived in Montgomery County to produce what it calls a truly green and sustainable data center in Dickerson. That data center is in Montgomery County, right on the banks of the Potomac River at the site of the old and shuttered Dickerson coal plant. And when I first visited the website of the company Atmosphere, I was further encouraged on that website. And you can visit that website at atmosphere-dc.com. That's atmosphere-dc.com. When I first visited that website, I saw all the images of wind turbines and solar panels, and the word sustainable is literally plastered across that website from top to bottom, including at the very top of the homepage where the company calls their data centers, quote, sustainably powered and ultra efficient. So they also on the website say that that Atmosphere, the company, is a developer and operator of the greenest and most energy efficient data centers on Earth. They talk about a very large battery storage farm that they're planning to develop on that campus. And they also make reference to, quote, carbon-free baseload nuclear energy that presumably would be at their disposal. So this is all on their website. So I was eager to get in touch with the company and uh, learn more about what one visiting the website would presume would be their plan for a data center powered with clean energy and batteries. However, in meeting with some of their top leaders very recently, I was very, very disappointed that the senior representatives and sustainability officers for the company Atmosphere, after an hour-long conversation, did not commit to running this 300 megawatt data center on clean energy at all. Not partially, not entirely, no commitment whatsoever. They talked about how they had interest in nuclear power, but that was too complicated, that they had interest in wind and solar power to potentially power the data center, but found that to be too difficult and expensive. And the bottom line was no commitment whatsoever to clean energy. So without a clean energy commitment, this data center, by drawing uh, electricity straight from the PJM mix, the regional electricity mix, which is majority fossil fuel generated. So without a clean energy commitment, this one data center in Montgomery County will emit 1 million tons of carbon dioxide per year. Now, that is the equivalent of adding 200,000 dirty cars onto the roads of Montgomery County every year. That's how much climate pollution this one data center will trigger. It will literally blow up the county's climate goals. Montgomery County takes pride in having almost 10 years ago declared, the county council did, declared a climate emergency and is committed to reducing climate pollution 100% by 2035. This data center will make those goals almost impossible. And keep in mind that Atmosphere has also suggested that they may in the future go beyond a 300 megawatt data center. They may do a second one on that site. So that would be even greater impacts in terms of climate pollution. This one data center, the first one they're proposing here, would increase county greenhouse gas emissions by 12.5% and represent a 1 to 2% increase in CO2 for the entire state of Maryland. So, again, in light of the county's climate goals, the county's overwhelming commitment to environmental sustainability, and given the rhetoric on the Atmosphere website, I point blank asked the company to commit to 100% clean energy empowering this data center, and they declined. So the bottom line is if this data center company won't voluntarily commit to this goal of 100% clean energy, the only entity that can protect the health of Montgomery County voters and our climate policies is the Montgomery County Council. The bottom line is, too, if we can't build a green data center in Montgomery County, where can you build one? And Doug Siglin, in a moment, will outline the options now available to the County Council to try to achieve that goal. So, without any further delay, I want to introduce Angie McCarthy, who is representing Nature Forward and Marylanders for Data Center Reform to talk about the additional pollution and climate implications of how to provide backup power for a data center like the one at Dickerson. So, Angie, take it away.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you all for being here today. For us, this is the largest development issue and land use issue of our generation, and it's one where we need as many voices as possible as part of this fight. So appreciate you all being here. What I wanted to talk a little bit about today, and per Mike's introduction, were the backup diesel generators. For those who are not aware, right now in Maryland, our only mandate for backup diesel generation is for a tier two diesel generator. And in Montgomery County, per the ZTA that is currently up from council leadership, they are encouraging the use of tier four diesel generation, as well as the county executive is also encouraging Tier 4 diesel generation. In my role with Nature Forward, as well as co-chair of Marylanders for Data Center Reform, we are encouraging the use of battery backup storage as an option and as an alternative to these diesel generators. For some context on why we're pushing so hard for this is data centers need 24-hour access to the grid, to energy, to their power sources. And Mike talked a little bit about the strain that might cause from the grid when we are not using renewable energy and when we're not pushing the envelope on how data centers can be built within Montgomery County and all over the state. Because of their voracious need for energy, a lot of our options often are posed as oh, we need to develop more natural gas. Oh, we need to develop coal power, and we have seen in other states and through other localities that that is simply not the case. And a lot of those options can be buoyed by the use of either backup storage through battery, through load shifting, and through load shedding. And thankfully, at the state level right now, there are several bills that are talking about demand response and load shedding. One of those bills is the Clean Capacity Bill from Delegate Lord Charkoudian, that we're really looking forward to and happy to drop into the chat after this. The load shifting paper from the Duke School of Environmental Science. And so there are alternatives to these backup diesel generation issues that pose such a huge public health risk. There is a paper from Dr. Shai Loren of UC Riverside that has put a number on the public health cost to Montgomery County from the backup diesel generator use in Northern Virginia. And that total is about $20 million a year in socialized public health costs in Montgomery just from the use of Northern Virginia's backup generators. And that is just coming from the wind pushing up all of those air pollutants into Montgomery County as well as the other near counties of DC. So that's already a huge cause of concern from us from an environmental justice standpoint, since obviously that air pollution is impacting our most overburdened and underserved communities the hardest, as they are the most likely to be underinsured. So we're really approaching this from the perspective of public health and environmental justice, and we want to ensure that while we're protecting while we might be protecting the grid, we're also protecting our communities from the harmful effects of increased air pollution, increased climate change, as that is a danger to their health. So I'll pause there, but happy to talk about any questions after, and we'll also put my information in the chat.
Thank you, Angie, so much. And next, Doug Siglin. Doug is a lifelong leader in the nonprofit environmental space here in the region and is now a volunteer and policy advisor with CCAN Action Fund. Doug?
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just be real brief. I want to touch on what's going on in the Montgomery County Council now that might help to achieve this goal that we're pushing for 100% clean energy for data centers in Montgomery County. First off, about 3 weeks ago, there was a forum in the evening that County Executive Elrich and several council members attended, where over 100 citizens came out and made their views known about data centers, many of whom talked about clean energy. 2 weeks ago, there was a formal hearing at the Montgomery County Council on February 24th to listen to citizens to talk about two bills that are pending in the council right now. Dozens of people came out, formally testified at that hearing. And those two bills are one, a task force bill that's being sponsored by Councilmember Glass that will have a hearing in committee next Tuesday and provides an opportunity not necessarily to require 100% clean energy, but rather would set up a task force. And I know that there is interest in making sure that that task force um, examines these energy issues and comes up with policy solutions how we could get to 100% clean energy. A second bill, which was the subject of the hearing and is moving through the process right now, is a zoning text amendment that's being sponsored by the leadership of the council, as Angie mentioned, and creates several conditions around data centers, new data centers in Montgomery County, but could also be a vehicle for talking about requirements for clean energy. We also know that other council members are looking for other approaches, possibly a moratorium, possibly a bill which is straightforwardly would say any new data center in Montgomery County has to be powered by 100% clean energy. So that's what's going on. There's several opportunities that are pending right now. I just want to take a moment and make one other point about costs. CCAN has asked for a lot of financial analysis around this question of 100% clean energy and what it might cost the developer. The bottom line on this is that it really doesn't cost all that much more than buying dirty energy from the grid. And over time, the energy from the grid, as we all know, is getting more and more expensive. The wholesale cost, the retail cost, getting more and more expensive as all data centers come online throughout the region. Clean energy is purchasable at a cost of a fairly modest increment from a business point of view. Our financial analysis suggests that it would be about 17.8% increment if that clean energy were purchased from the PJM grid, and far less, about 5.9% incremental cost if the energy were purchased from outside the region. So those are pretty shocking numbers. It doesn't cost the developer all that much more to buy clean energy, and that's why Google and other major data center developers are buying clean energy for their data centers. And it's our view that Atmosphere DC, either voluntarily or by requirement, ought to do the same for the Dickerson plant. So I'll turn that back to Mike.
Thank you, Doug. And yes, we would love it if the Atmosphere Data Center Company would voluntarily commit to powering this data center with 100% clean energy. Again, either purchasing it within the PJM grid or outside the grid. And we don't want to sacrifice our health and our county's climate goals to a company that simply is trying to maximize their profits by powering their data center with dirty electricity versus clean power. And it is our reading of Montgomery County law that the county can, in various ways, as Doug described, require that this data center be powered by clean energy, including, in fact, the planning department, Montgomery County Planning Department, has recommended to the county that if you approve new zoning for this data center, that you need to have the hearing examiner certify that the data center will not adversely affect the county's climate goals. So this is already a recommendation from the planning board to the council. This is all we're asking for. We're asking that if you're going to come to our county and you're going to build a data center this big, that you simply respect the values and the concerns of this county, the largest in Maryland, the most populous county in Maryland, by bringing in your own clean energy. And as Doug said, this does not result in a huge financial burden for the company. Yes, it will reduce their profits, presumably, fractionally, but a county like Montgomery County has every right to expect this and to demand it, and to set an example for the rest of the region by requiring it. With that, I would love to. Angie, you have a comment in the chat. Did you want to jump in?
Sure thing, and I just wanted to put that in before I have to hop. For all of the folks who are on here, uh, Nature Forward as well as CCAN are both part of the Marylanders for Data Center Reform Coalition, and we're having our inaugural lobby day on March 11th. And we would like to invite all of you to the rally and press conference portion of the day, which is 9 to 10 a.m. at Lawyers Mall in Annapolis. Dropped the link in the chat where you can have more information and see who our speakers are. I also dropped my contact information if you're interested in coming and seeing what we're all about. But I'll go back to you, Mike, to manage the Q&A.
Great. And Angie has to drop off at 12:30. Doug and I can continue past 12:30. We'd like to ask you, any reporters on the call, if you have a question, just drop them in the chat. And Nicole, if you could read those questions. And if you want to catch Angie with one of your questions, you should probably drop that question now because again, she has to drop off at 12:30. And
Sure.
just want to also remind all reporters that this is being recorded and we will send you the full recording of the of this presser from the start. So if you join late, you'll still have the audio. Go ahead, Nicole.
Great. Our first question is from Elia Griffin from Bethesda Today. They ask, are there any examples that you can provide of data centers, particularly hyperscale centers, that are powered with 100% clean energy? Can you talk about those data centers, please?
Doug?
Hi. I don't know the specifics of the data centers, if that's what you're asking. I do know that Google is very proud of the fact that it has purchased, I think the number now is something like 22 gigawatts of clean energy to power its data centers. But so far as I know, the information about the specific data centers being powered by clean energy is proprietary and not part of their reports.
If I can jump in on that as well, Mike, and Ilya, I also want to address your second question, which is what we mean by clean energy when we're talking about it for hyperscale data centers. What we have found in both Maryland, Virginia, and all across the nation, oftentimes data center developers will say that they have a fiduciary interest or are highly incentivized to fund and push forward clean energy. And when they say that, they might mean a variety of things. But for us on this call, I don't think it's overstepping to say that we mean carbon-free energies. So that means solar, wind, and the like. But for these hyperscalers, they are saying that they are trying to fund or pursue clean energy, and that often means buying up SRECs or solar renewable energy credits or other types of credits that come from renewable energy. But there are several issues with that. One, it might not actually be from the state where they are building the data center. So if I'm building a data center in Maryland and I'm buying SRECs from Ohio, that's not really benefiting the Maryland economy. That's not giving Marylanders jobs, and that's not really adding any more resilience to our grid. Additionally, SRECs and other types of renewable energy credits are able to be traded on their own sort of stock market of sorts, and therefore it's not really incentivizing the build out of new renewable energy when we start talking about clean energy. So I just wanted to put that slight caveat in there where a lot of times data center developers will say that they are proponents of clean energy, but they're not necessarily pushing forward new clean energy.
And to be clear, Atmosphere is not saying they're going to go buy RECs or any of those instruments that you're talking about.
Yep.
Chesapeake Climate Action Network does support a company like this engaging in a power purchase agreement where they're actually contracting with a solar or wind developer to build additive, new projects, not RECs, but projects. And if those can be uh, those contracts can be for projects within the regional grid, that's fine. I know that, Atmosphere will tell you it's too hard. There's all these projects are bottled up in the PJM queue because of PJM mismanagement, the regional grid operator. We still feel like there's a way to get there. They could commit to a timeline of how to get there, or they can also in our view, because we're fighting against global warming and pollution. Clean energy in Texas is just as valuable to the climate as clean energy in Maryland. That if this company were to agree to a power purchase agreement, again, new additive solar or wind outside the grid, that would be our least favorable alternative, but we feel like from a climate perspective, perfectly legitimate. So there are multiple options, and they don't break the bank. And we just ask that this company atmosphere coming into a county like Montgomery County, not penalize the people of Montgomery County with additional pollution just so they can maximize to the last degree the benefits to their shareholders. There has to be a balance and there has to be a respect for the environmental uh, goals that this county has set, and they're achievable in our view.
Great. Thanks, Mike and Angie and Doug. Angie, I know you're going to have to jump in just a few minutes here, but I am going to go to the next question. Our next question is, are your groups generally opposed to data centers and the AI push? If so, how could you stop it?
That's a great question. We are not opposed to data centers. I mean, we're on a Zoom call right now, right? And we've all got smartphones in our pockets. We are not opposed to data centers. We're not opposed necessarily to AI. Our goal right now is simply to uh, uh, encourage a policy response from our lawmakers that protect us from this very, very rapid, um, uh, startlingly rapid push for data centers across our region. The number one thing that these data center developers will tell you is their priority is speed. They want these things built very, very quickly. You talk to members of the Maryland Public Service Commission, you talk to the People's Council representative, you talk to lawmakers, they will all say these data center companies come into their offices and the number one thing they want is speed. These things have to happen in a hurry. From a voter's perspective, from a conservationist perspective, speed is not necessarily will not necessarily result in good policy. We need to slow down. We need to contemplate our collective values. We need to protect our health of people and the environment. And we need to figure out, even if it takes a little bit longer, even if it costs a little bit more, how can we do this truly sustainably? How can we develop a data center in Montgomery County that matches, frankly, the rhetoric on Atmosphere's website? Again, if you go to their website, I mean, it is pronounced their commitment to sustainability, efficiency, the environment, renewable energy. It's all there, but they have not committed to those same values in terms of the specific development of this data center. So we're not opposed to data centers. We just want to see companies match their commitments in practice and help us continue to have the highest climate pollution goals in the country.
I will just
Great.
add a little bit to that and then jump off. And that's going to, I'm going to echo everything and borrow a play from the Annapolis playbook of saying me too to much of Mike's comments. And the last thing I'll say is that oftentimes data center developers are saying that they want to hold themselves accountable and they don't want the lowest common denominator developer to be the be kind of the focal point for a lot of data center development. And until we have data center development that is responsible, transparent, just for our communities, we have to keep pushing those lowest common denominators out through smart regulation that prioritizes our communities, our health, and the health of our environment as well. So thank you so much for having me, Mike and CCAN, and I'll talk to y'all later.
Thanks, Angie.
Great. Thanks for being here, Angie. All right. We're gonna fit in a few more questions here. I just want to re-up that if you're a reporter and you have a question, please put it in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Um, this question is, what about companies who say they want to run data centers on clean energy, but because of PJM mismanagement, it's just not possible?
Doug, you want to take that?
We think it is possible. Certainly, certainly we've got critique of PJM and the way they've handled their queue for new projects, and um, certainly PJM needs reform and get the projects to market faster. A lot of the projects in that queue just sort of go away before they can ever be approved, and so there needs to be reform at PJM. But having said that, there is a market price today for clean energy, both within the PJM grid and outside the PJM grid. And if Atmosphere Data Centers or any other company developing a data center chose to power it with clean energy, the energy is out there. It's viable and they can do it. So I don't think we should use the mismanagement at PJM as an excuse for data centers that just haven't shown the willingness to want to do it.
Yeah, and some of these companies have said that in candid moments, we'd like to power our data centers with renewable energy, but we just can't wait the extra 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it takes for the I don't know, the price to come down to something that they like better, or the speed with which they can build these. They just point to delays, the length of time, the slightly increased costs, and they say we can't wait for those parameters to line up with what our shareholders want. And our question is, why not? Why can't you wait? Even if it takes a little bit longer and you have to pay a little bit more. So speed should not be the number one determinant of public policy and regulation related to data centers. It should be what is best for the community, what is best for human health and environmental health, period. And also, what is best for ratepayers, because this speed is leading us into already experienced tidal wave of ratepayer increases. So I think greater thoughtfulness and policy reflection is required for sure.
Great. Okay, next question here is, are you telling companies that if they absolutely can't power with clean energy, that they should wait until they can, or just withdraw from the state?
Well, I think we just answered the wait part. Yes, they should wait. Um, uh, I live in Montgomery County. I've lived here for a long time. I have worked with the county council on a lot of progressive climate clean energy laws. Um, I believe that 100% of the Montgomery County Council members are strong environmentalists and want to do the right thing. But I think that if a company comes to our county and is proposing to increase greenhouse gas emissions between 12 and 14%, equal to adding 200,000 dirty cars to our streets in Montgomery County. If that company says that's the best they could do, yes, they should not do business in Montgomery County.
I would just add to that by saying that Maryland actually has laws that require that greenhouse gas emissions, carbon pollution be reduced substantially by 2031 and get to net zero by 2045. And right now there's this rush to create data centers, not only in Montgomery County, but there's proposals for Prince George's and Baltimore and Charles and Calvert. And of course, Frederick is this mega campus. And every one of those data centers that comes online without being powered by clean energy is just setting us further and further behind on those Maryland emissions goals. And from my point of view, this is a Montgomery County issue, but it's also a state issue, and state lawmakers ought to be paying more attention to what these data centers are doing to our own law.
Well said, Doug. All right, we have two more questions here. Let's see if we can get through these. And last call for questions in the Q&A. Our next question is, what about powering data centers on nuclear power? Are you opposed?
No, I mean, speaking for Chesapeake Climate Action Network, we are not anti-nuclear. We are not reflexively opposed to nuclear development if it can, basically if it can pencil out, if you can build nuclear power safely and at a reasonable cost that is competitive, if not better than the cost of efficiency, solar and wind, then we are supportive of that. We just have never seen that. We've never seen a nuclear proposal that doesn't take extraordinary levels of public support because of the cost. Now, there's a lot of promise in these small modular reactors that would be, factory produced at scale, presumably to bring down the cost. Um, there are public policy incentives for those in Virginia and elsewhere. Again, from our perspective, if it costs a lot more than energy efficiency and wind and solar and batteries, then it doesn't make much sense in terms of public policy. But we're open to a conversation, case by case, as to how it could be applied.
Great. Okay, and we have another question here. It seems that the consensus in the industry is that it's just not possible to run data centers on 100% clean energy. Aside from atmosphere, have you spoken to other data center developers about the 100% clean energy proposal? What are some solutions?
Um, yes, we have talked to other companies in Virginia and elsewhere, and there's a bill still alive in the Virginia General Assembly right now that would tie tax incentives. And data center companies in Virginia now get $1.9 billion of tax incentives in that state. But a new bill would tie those tax incentives to the amount of clean energy you bring to powering your data centers. So that conversation is still going on in Richmond. We hope that it passes. We feel cautiously optimistic that some version of that will happen. Yes, the companies can do it. A lot of them just want to make as much money as they can, burning fossil fuels versus renewables. But you can see where public policy, even in the state of Virginia, where an extraordinary amount of all the world's data centers are in Virginia. Again, 60 different data center reform bills were introduced there in Richmond. So yeah, there's a robust conversation going on between environmental advocates, consumer advocates, and the tech companies themselves. And we intend to continue to be part of that until we reach, ideally, what the company Atmosphere here in Montgomery County has proposed on their website that they want to achieve, and that is sustainable green data centers. That's what we want.
Great. All right, and our last question here is, have you talked to members of the MoCo Council about the Dickerson plant?
Yes, we have. We've talked to a number of them. The conversations are ongoing. I think there's a lot of interest among council members to look at this and to figure out a good policy. What that policy is going to be, is it going to be a combination of moratorium, task force, zoning amendments, or a flat out bill just passed to mandate 100% clean energy for data centers in the county? We don't know. I think those conversations are in the early phase, but there's a lot of receptivity to to this issue. And I think the issue of clean energy is risen to the top of concerns of a great number of county council members.
I would only add to that to say yes, everything Mike just said is true. We're in conversation. I think all of the members of the council at this point are concerned that Montgomery County has almost a decade of activism on this climate issue, beginning back in 2017 when the climate mobilization and the targets, the emissions targets were created. And then there was a huge public process that created this climate action plan. And there's been an enormous amount of energy and time and effort and money put into implementing that climate action plan. And now all of a sudden, a data center pops its head up in Dickerson that would just blow all that up. And there has been some turnover in the council. I think Councilmember Katz may be the only member of the council who was actually there in 2017, but it still is the official policy of the council that they passed a resolution, they endorsed these emissions targets, and I don't think any member of the council really wants to see those emissions targets and all that effort that's gone on over the last decade blown up by one data center.
Great. Okay. Seeing no more questions, Mike, I'll pass it over to you for any closing words. And the recording will be made available in the press release. And it is also available on our website following this the conclusion of this press conference. All right, Mike?
Yeah, and that website is chesapeakeclimate.org, and CCAN.
Yep, it's in the chat,
In the
but I
chat.
will
Oh, there
bump
it
it
is.
again.
Yeah.
It is ccanactionfund.org.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. This conversation is not going to go anywhere. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. Angie mentioned the data center rally that's going to be happening soon in Annapolis. We'll have more information about that on our website. We too are planning a rally in Silver Spring on March 13, Friday at 11 a.m. To advocate for 100% clean energy prior to a county executive forum that will be happening that day at the Civic Building in downtown Silver Spring. So we will send you more information about that. And thanks again for everyone for joining. Have a great day.